Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial in the rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. We're looking at the high-stakes clash between profit and ethics. We're going to explore exactly how the ISO/IEC 42001-2023 standard helps organizations identify, manage, and audit conflicts of interest across the entire AI lifecycle. Because, let's be honest, when AI systems are making decisions about everything from who gets a job to how autonomous cars drive, the stakes literally could not be higher.
Okay, let's dive into this because this right here is the core dilemma at the heart of AI development today. What actually happens when an AI system is pulled between, making a buck and doing the right thing? We really like to think of AI as this purely logical, totally impartial machine. But the reality, these systems are built, they're trained, and they're deployed by humans. And humans have competing interests. When financial incentives clash with ethical responsibilities, the outcomes can be pretty disastrous. We're talking serious bias, unfair outcomes, and just a complete lack of accountability.
And that brings us to Section 1, the AI conflict problem.
To really grasp this problem, we have to realize that AI systems just aren't developed in a vacuum. It's like a giant puzzle. They're shaped by a huge array of stakeholders, developers, executives, investors, and they very often have totally competing loyalties and motives. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this conflict plays out in the real world. Just imagine an AI system used by a bank to approve loans. On one side, you've got the financial motive. The bank stands to make way more money by approving higher risk, higher interest loans. But on the other side, you have the ethical requirement, right? The AI absolutely must ensure fair, unbiased, and transparent lending practices without discriminating against anyone. If investors push hard for that financial motive, well, the AI might get tweaked to favor those high-risk applicants, completely undermining the ethical integrity of the whole system.
Let's look at a second scenario, and this time, autonomous vehicles. This one is literally a matter of life and death. In a sudden emergency, an autonomous vehicle might have to make a split-second decision. The corporate financial motive might say, hey, prioritize the safety of the passenger above all else to reduce our company's liability. But ethical AI deployment demands that the system minimizes harm to all human life, pedestrians included. If a company silently prioritizes its own financial protection over broader ethical considerations, that is a massive conflict of interest, and it's one that the AI is going to execute at 60 miles per hour.
To keep these systems in check, we rely on Section 2, the independent lead auditor. Because AI is so incredibly complex, it often operates as this kind of black box where the decision-making process is totally opaque. Well, the ISO/IEC 42023 standard relies on the lead auditor to act as the ultimate guardian of AI ethics, essentially turning that conflicted black box into a transparent glass box. So the crucial point is auditor independence. This is the ability of the auditor to do their job without bias, external influence, or any personal and financial conflicts of interest. Basically, if an auditor isn't entirely independent, their findings are completely compromised. You just can't have someone auditing a system if they have a vested interest in how that audit turns out. Independence is what guarantees the audit is based purely on facts, evidence, and the strict requirements of the ISO standard. But independence is fragile, and there are specific hazards that can easily skew an auditor's judgment. These threats can be things like having a financial stake in the organization or personal relationships with internal staff. But pay close attention to this one: previous involvement in developing the AI system. The standard makes it crystal clear. If you helped build the AI, or even if you consulted on the organization's information security management system, you are disqualified from auditing it. You simply cannot objectively grade your own homework. And of course, external pressures from management desperately looking for a favorable report can also severely threaten this independence. And this builds directly into the long-term auditing lifecycle. Organizations can't just use the exact same auditor forever. There is a regulatory necessity for auditor rotation. See, over long engagements, something called a familiarity threat creeps in. An auditor might just become a little too comfortable with the organization's staff and inadvertently start overlooking deficiencies. By actually mandating auditor rotation, the standard ensures that fresh, completely unbiased perspectives are continuously brought into the mix. It keeps the whole process rigorous and objective year after year. So, what happens when issues do arise? That brings us to Section 3, documenting conflict escalation. Look, even with the absolute best intentions and the most independent auditors, conflicts of interest are just inevitable in the complex landscape of AI. What really separates a responsible organization from a negligent one isn't the absence of conflict, it's how they manage it. Here is the exact step-by-step procedure required by the standard. First, the conflict has to be formally identified. Say, a huge dispute between the legal team and the data science team over using sensitive demographic data. Second, it gets escalated to a designated conflict resolution officer, or CRO. Third, they perform a root cause analysis to understand exactly why this clash happened in the first place. And finally, the organization must implement a documented resolution and approval. Walking through these steps ensures a conflict doesn't just get buried in some random email thread. It gets managed properly before it turns into a full-blown regulatory violation. Now, what's really interesting here is the tangible evidence required at each of these stages. An auditor is not just going to take your word that a conflict was magically resolved. They look for the paper trail. During escalation, they fully expect to see formal complaint forms and evidence logs. During the investigation, they want to see cause and effect diagrams, like fishbone diagrams or 5 whys analysis sheets to prove you actually dug into the root cause. And at the resolution stage, they'll be looking for arbitration summaries and closure verification reports. Bottom line, if it isn't documented in the eyes of the auditor, it literally didn't happen. So once a conflict is fully investigated, how do they actually solve it? Well, the standard outlines a few acceptable resolution methods. You might use mediation facilitated by an internal compliance officer. For those really complex legal clashes, arbitration involving external legal experts might be the way to go. Joint decision-making with stakeholders is also highly encouraged to build actual consensus. And yes, there is an option for an executive override, but note the massive caveat here. It requires incredibly strict documentation justifying exactly why the executive made that call. Total accountability is the name of the game. Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, building trust through transparency. By applying these really rigorous, documented procedures, we bridge the gap between dangerous AI bias and safe, ethical innovation. Fostering transparency isn't just a box-ticking exercise for regulatory compliance. It's about actually proving to your users, your stakeholders, and society at large that your AI systems are trustworthy. It proves that when financial motives clashed with ethical deployment, your organization had the governance in place to make the right, responsible choice. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a really powerful quote directly from our source material. In the dynamic and high-stakes world of artificial intelligence, the written record becomes the final guardian of accountability. Impartiality and rigorous documentation are truly our best defenses in this AI era, and it leaves us with a pretty provocative question to think about. As AI becomes increasingly autonomous and baked into our daily lives, is your organization's documentation strong enough to defend the ethics of your algorithms when they are finally called into question? Definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.